Hi. So we're doing a very special Instagram Live with Giant Step today. We're going to be celebrating the four DJs who really helped create the sound of Giant Step over the years. We're going to be doing this in a really interesting way. We're going to be going really back to back in conversation. And we're going to do it over 2 hours. So, as you probably know, Instagram live only lasts an hour per session. So I'm going to do Smash and Jazzy first. And then we will then start another one at 6 o'clock with Nickodemus and Ron Trent. Don't forget, I'm in conversation with them. They're not doing DJ sets. We wouldn't be able to do that with Instagram because of copyright laws, but we'll try and work out some sort of a DJ set at some time soon. So once again, everyone's going to be getting half an hour, and I'm just waiting for Smash to join, and then we'll get going. So bear with us. If you haven't checked out the virtual film festival, Giant Set's virtual film festival, please do that. We've got some great films. I see Jazzy has joined, so I'm just waiting on Smash. If I don't see Smash in the next few minutes, maybe we'll go straight with Jazzy, and then I'll switch over to Smash. I was trying to do it in sort of like actual order of when the DJs were involved in the club, but you know, we don't have to stick to the script. See a lot of old faces joining. I see Jonathan's joined. I see Mac has joined. I see Jonesy has joined. And let me just see if I can see Smash. Not yet. Oh, how do you join? Smash, just get on, just join Giant Step. At Giant Step, and then I will I'll put you on. Are you on? Let me just see if I can find you. So Smash, hold on. We got to get Smash to join. I don't see Smash. Just waiting on Smash to join. Hold on 1 second, guys. I do not see Smash yet. So what I'm going to do is, oh, here we go. Smash has joined. Great. Okay, so okay, Smash has joined. We're going to bring him on. Here we go. Waiting for Smash to approve my invitation. Here we go.
Am I here?
Yeah, you're here.
Am I here?
You are. You're
I'm
here.
sorry, man.
It's okay.
I had technical difficulties. How you doing today?
No worries. We're used to having technical difficulties.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
That's our roots. That's our roots. We're experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by. Have a drink.
So welcome, Wayne. So happy to see you as always.
Happy to see you too, brother.
Thank you. As it's going to be, we only have about 25 minutes. I want to get right in there.
Yes,
And
right in.
yeah. So
Short answers.
I think you need to explain to people how you got started, because before you joined us at Giant Step, you had a whole history, legendary history. I mean, I first met you through Save the Robots. In fact, Mitch Moses introduced us. Because when I think I had you do some parties pre-Giant Step for me, but
Right.
But Mitch, I was talking to Mitch about, I'd met Mitch through Big House and everything, and
I was like, I need a guy who can do da 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 da. And he goes, oh, you got to speak to Smash. I go, Smash from Save the Robots? You know him, you know? So he goes, yeah, and that's how we hooked up. But tell us a little bit about, you know, how you got started in DJing, you know, and what you were doing up until you started working with us. So.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna give you the abbreviated version since our time is limited in terms of how I got started, because there were a bunch of different starts. There were a lot of starts and stops. There were a lot of roadblocks. I didn't even intend to be a DJ. And my earliest fantasy was to be a producer. Quincy Jones, people like that were my heroes. So I was like, I want my name on a record. So anything I have to do to get legally on that, in that situation, that's what I'm going to do. And I started making beats probably mid 80s when drum machines and keyboards became more affordable, and I would swap between my buddies like DJ Romaine, who's still out there doing tracks, and him and I used to switch between having, I'd borrow his keyboard, he'd borrow my drum machine, and we'd make tracks. And then eventually I figured that if I wanted to hit any of these tracks heard, I'd have to become a DJ to play them, because no DJ back then, I couldn't go up to some guy with a cassette and be like, hey, play this. So I started doing cassette parties. I was doing parties because I couldn't afford turntables, even though I had a turntable. But anyway, I was doing cassette parties, barbecues, backyard parties, birthday parties, eventually stuff like that. And then I started working in a studio called Platinum Factory. It was the first 24-track studio in Brooklyn. And a lot of great records were recorded. Fatback were recording albums there. Vaughn Mason and crew did Bounce Rock, Skate Roll.
Oh, wow.
My first day working there, I was just an intern emptying the trash, stuff like that, going to the store. And I opened the door, and Vaughn Mason and crew, they all were laying out on the floor like somebody came in and murdered them. But they had been up the whole night that morning. They had been up the whole night working on Bounce Rock, Skate Roll, like editing it, finishing it. And so that was my first day. Like, oh, wow, these guys, this is how you do it. There's no 9 to 5 here. Like, you got to be in it until it's finished. But I met a lot of great people. Dude, I met Betty Carter, who at the time, she had her Bet Car label, so she was producing all her own stuff. First woman I ever saw producing, I mean, she was executive producer, artist on the label, and I would hear her give advice to some of the other engineers or other producers that were coming through. She was so generous. So just by being a fly on the wall, I learned from people like her. Like, own your stuff, try to own your stuff, try to get in a position where you're financing it so you can figure out what you really want to do. So anyway, after working there for a year, I really got into DJing, like, as a thing where it's like, okay, that's how I'm going to get my music heard. So from then it was just like playing whoever would let me share the decks with them. Block parties, like I said, birthday parties, eventually after hours clubs in Brooklyn, just little bar things here and there. But that was my Brooklyn roots. Watching people DJ at the park, people like Flowers, Grandmaster Flowers, Tangeray, Doc Brown, who was the cousin of my DJ partner, Azel Brown. And he was our idol because he was in record pool. He had sound system. He would give us his little cast off promos, like his worn out records. He would throw them to us, and we were just like, "We've got promos." For us, that was like a big achievement. So stuff like, stuff that's like worth a lot of money now. Back then, it was just in terms of social and creative and artistic worth. They were gold. They were pieces of gold for us. But it's just like, the early roots of disco. So this is like 77, 78. But forward me getting into robots, my son had just been born. This was 86, 87. My son, Keith, had just been born. And I had a choice, like, I'm going to keep working temp jobs, messenger jobs, or am I going to like really try to go for it? And I was working at Sounds. Remember Sounds, the record shop on Sparks in New York?
Yeah.
I worked at Sounds, and it was like a whole new world of like opportunity in terms of getting records, connecting with label people, and people like John Hall, who was my coworker. And I remember John Hall kept telling me about this place he was playing at, Save the Robots, and I was like, "What is it?" He's like, "Oh, it's an after hours spot." For me, after hours meant you go take drugs, do other stuff, and I was straight edge at the time. I'm a new dad. I'm like, no smoking, no drink. I'm going to be an example. I was like, nah, I don't want to work at a place where people just there to get high. And he's like, come on, man. It's like a really cool place. And he was pretty straight edge. So I was kind of surprised he was working there. But eventually he got me to go. I auditioned and I got the gig. It was supposed to be a temporary thing, and it turned into a 4-year residency. And from working at Save the Robots, I didn't realize that so many people from the industry, the club industry, and some in the music industry as well, but were coming there every night, or every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I think it was. I was Thursday night.
Yeah,
Thursday,
I used to come on Thursday.
Yeah, and that's So I remember you coming in with your flyers, but the other place, I think we technically first met when you were doing that party at Trixie's uptown. Because I lived a few blocks from Trixie's at the time. I was living in Midtown on 54th and 11th. And I would walk by and I would see, I forgot what night of the week. It was an unusual night of the week. What was it, like a Monday?
Well, I was actually a busboy at Trixie's.
Oh, okay.
And I emceed the talent show. But
I remember because I came at the very end. I was like, what the hell's going on here? It looked like a Mardi Gras.
It was bedlam, yes.
Remember, Midtown was the ghost.
Yeah.
There was nothing going on in Midtown. And so you guys had this hopping party going on at this restaurant. I was like, so I think technically either I saw you there or met you there. But anyway, Robots, I remember you distinctly coming with this stack of flyers. And then you invited me to come to your party. And then we did, I think it was SOS, Save Our Souls.
Yep, Save Our Souls, yeah.
And so we did that on
Saturdays, yeah.
Yeah. So, that was the start of us. Like,
how did you get the name Smash?
Oh, that was a joke. That was a one-time. It was a one-time AKA. I was doing a party. So back then when you had a gig at a club, a lot of people don't know this about the club scene in New York in the 70s and 80s, but usually most resident DJs were exclusive to that place. You didn't just jump around and play anywhere you wanted. Most DJs were locked into wherever they were playing. It was like not necessarily a literal contract, but definitely a spoken contract. Like, you play with us, you're our guy or female. And so I was playing somewhere as Wayne C. That was my DJ name, like, my real name. And I got invited to do a party, and I couldn't use Wayne C because it was like if the people at this club, this bar, I can't even remember the name of the bar, but like if word gets out I'm playing this other club. And I had just told them I couldn't do New Year's Eve. I just turned down a New Year's Eve gig because I thought I was going to be chilling with my buddies, and I didn't feel like working that night. But I got invited to do this gig, so I said I got to come up with another name, AKA. And it was almost literally like pulling a name out of a hat. It was like word salad. It was like what's something ridiculous that stands out. And so I was at my buddy DJ Romaine's house, and then we came up with Smash. So him and I came up with it. And I was just supposed to be for one night. It wasn't going to be something I was going to use as a tag and keep going on with. But from that New Year's party, I got 2 other gigs. And then I was like, wait, this DJ Smash got 2 gigs in one night. I had barely, it was like, all right, let me keep him around. And so I kind of used that name as an alternative to my real name, just like it was like my little AK secret identity, but then it took a life of its own on. I think it's just like Giant Step. It took on it's like after a while people stopped looking at the literal meaning and it becomes a phrase. It was just like, and I swear, Maurice, I've gone around the world, I've seen the t-shirt, I've seen people wearing it, and they had no idea of our history. Yeah. I've seen, and they're like, it's like, what is it? Is it a t-shirt company? I'm like, no, it's a club. A club? Oh, wait, so I'm sure you got that. Like, what are you? What?
Yeah, we get it all the time. We still get it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, it's great that the brand can be ubiquitous.
Correct.
But at the same time, sometimes people just need to know you're one thing.
Yeah.
But that's how I got started. Brooklyn. I grew up going between Brooklyn and Lower East Side. I was born Lower East Side, Beth Israel, and Beth Israel Hospital, and grew up on going like 3rd Street, Rivington Street. So I was a Lower East Side kid. I ate at Cat's Deli every day for lunch after school. Between going to school, and then after school, go get another hot dog for dinner or pizza. Like Yonah Schimmel, Knishes. That's what I grew up up until I was 8, because I was living with my dad there, and then went back to live with my mom in Brooklyn. So that's in Bed-Stuy, Crown, like near where you live.
You
I probably,
right? Yeah, yeah. It's St James's Place, right? St
yeah,
Charles, St
yeah.
Charles, yeah. St
Charleston, James St.
Francis, yeah,
John's,
yeah.
Franklin Ave,
Hmm.
Nostrand Ave, Crown Street. Later on, Brownsville, so Pacific Street, Dean Street. I lived all in that part of New York. But that's how I got started. Brooklyn gave me my musical chops in terms of any skill I needed, DJing, production, like being there. And then once I got into Manhattan, that's when I started to learn about the business. So clubs, eventually labels, things like that.
And when we decided to do Giant Step, I mean, you were the only DJ who I thought, the reason why first wanted to work with you was your ability to mix anything that and cut, and there were so few records out at the time that fit into what we were trying to do as Giant Step.
Yeah,
It's like we needed somebody who had those capabilities. But I didn't know until I started talking to you that you were a big jazz head as well. So you were like, oh yeah, Bob, so it was just, and then the point originally was just to play records, and
right.
then one day Richard walked in and started playing his flute, and a whole other thing happened. But you like took it in your stride. It's like, oh, I'm gonna create a live thing here, so it was,
that was, I mean, you guys. So I remember meeting you and Jonathan, and we were talking about music, and we were just exchanging, what we like and what we're into. And you guys had a stack of records, and you're like, so we want to give you these just to give you an idea as a primer. And I'd never seen, in terms of the label, I was like, ooh, what is this? Acid jazz. It's like what the hell is acid jazz? And you were like, don't pay attention to that. Just focus on them. And then I started reading the names on the label. I was like, oh, Melvin Sparks. Like I grew up hearing that stuff. And then when I went to listen to those comps, I realized, oh, I know all this. I grew up with this, even though I didn't know the names of the artists or the songs. I grew up hearing this stuff on jukeboxes, in the 60s, 70s. So for me, it was just like swimming in familiar waters. And I've pulled out a stack of these, I still have those records. So
yeah, we want them back, by the way. We were
for you. Keep it safe.
wondering where they'd gone.
Go.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Go.
Yeah, those are the original. They're probably worth quite a lot of money now. They're the original acid jazz compilations. Oh yeah,
So
I remember that one. Yeah.
I feel, I mean, still, I could rock a party with just this stack of records you guys gave me, and I know that was the intention. But I also needed to make sure that, even though what we were doing, what we started to do, what we were trying to do was revolutionary in hindsight. We still had to maintain like the floor, so keeping the floor is like, it's great to play all this live original stuff, but a lot of we had to train them, right? We had to figure out how to retrain people's ears and make it relevant to them. So it was luckily groups like Gangstar, Tribe Called Quest were coming on sampling these same records, right? So to be able to go back and forth between, we got the jazz, which we probably played to death, right? That was like probably one of our biggest anthems, but you could go back and forth with that and say a Melvin Sparks or original Blue Note, Grant Green or something like that. And I was terrified. I remember the first one of the first nights at Giant Step, and I come in and you guys had it set up on the stage, the DJ set up, and I was like, I can't go. Like for me, the stage was like this honorable, this place of like this sacred space where musicians went to shine. And I remember because I had played a couple of Groove Academy events, and you had me up in the crow's. I was so used to being up in that crow's nest at SOBs, hidden away, where I could look down and see it. So being on stage for me was like, I remember I had probably 5 minutes of actual stage fright. Like, I'm not going up there, But yeah, people, when Richard and then I think it was, did we have Steve Coleman come sit in?
Steve Coleman did, yeah. And
like when I first,
yeah. So we started. It was a Monday in September. SOBs. Monday is the worst night, and there were not too many people there. I mean, we really had to sustain for a while before people, because it was so different. But actually, Jonathan I just saw it mentioned the Tom Waits song, and that is the song. Step Right Up is the song that really reminds me of you, but actually not in a good way, because
I know.
there's a line in there that said, going out of business, going out of business, going out of business. And you'd always play it when there was nobody in the club. And that's exactly how I was feeling. Oh,
I remember.
we're going out of business.
This is not helping. I don't need a soundtrack for my pain.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember you distinctly coming up and going, Smash, and you did it in the most polite British way possible. You were like, is it possible you could actually stop playing that for a while? Just give it a break. I'm like, okay, man. And I think it was one of the few, if only times you ever told me or gave me any kind of, because that's the thing I loved about playing with you guys. You never told me what to play. You never said, oh, yo, because most of the other clubs I was playing at, that's what I was getting. I was getting censored at a lot of places. They would say, don't play so much hip hop. Don't play so much reggae or whatever. But you guys never said to me, like, don't play this and absolutely don't play it, except for that record.
Right.
So,
well, it was because we really believed in the DJs. I mean, all four of you guys and Chill Freeze, who's not going to be joining us. Anyone who was a DJ, they, you know, it wasn't taken lightly. And, you know, I mean, and, you know, today everybody's a DJ, but back then, in order to control the floor, and especially doing it the way it was being done at Giant Step, you needed to have this you guys had a very rare skill and also a knowledge. You know, again, now you can Google a record, you can find an MP3 anywhere, but in those days you had to have a collection. If you didn't have that collection, you couldn't even go to the party, you know. Right.
It's true. Your collection was your trading call. That was like your card. That was like, you know, having exclusives, having firsts, or having obscurities, you know, having grails, and being able to, you know, put that record on, and people went, and then, you know, other DJs coming around, huddling around the decks going, what's that, you know. And the other, I think one of the things I loved about playing at the club, not only I was learning as I was teaching. Like, I was learning. I didn't go there I didn't go there with the mentality like I'm going to teach people anything, but I had people tell me, like, I learned a lot about music listening to you play there. But what I always say is, like, well, I was learning too, because the musicians also were like DJs. They had a knowledge. People like Genji and Richard and Nappy, they also had an encyclopedic knowledge of music, and they were playing. They knew some of the riffs I was playing, and they knew stuff that I didn't know either. And stuff I would find out, like, as they played it regularly, like, what's that riff? And then they would tell me, oh, it's like, that's Coleman Hawkins, or there's a Dizzy Gillespie riff, and they do these riffs on top of these beats I was playing. I was like, oh, okay. And then I'd go find that record and figure out, oh, maybe I can sample it or just enjoy it, because, you know, I was learning about jazz as I was playing it.
And talking about exclusives, I mean, one of the amazing things for us is we used to basically listen to your records either when they were in the process of being made, or we would get the exclusives of your Jazzy Grooves and all the stuff that you were then doing with 8-Ball, which was, like, again, like a unique experience for people when they were coming down.
But, you know, like Giants, it was so synchronistic, and like when we started 8-Ball, it wasn't originally going to be jazz or jazz grooves. I think we were looking at either being a straight hip hop label or doing techno, like have a techno label, have a hip hop label. And what happened, right, like that year, 90 was a pivotal year for me. A lot of things changed. I got a demo deal with Warner Brothers. I was putting out records with New Groove since 88. And they were doing well. And like so many synchronistic things happened between myself and the club. Like when I remember my first trip to London, and you said, you got to go meet this guy, Giles Peterson. And I said, oh, that guy, he licensed one of my New Groove tracks. So I planned on meeting him, but that just gave me another reason to meet him. You endorse, and you tell him, you know, like I told him about you, and I want you to meet him. He is, you know, and then I went to the WAG that night, and I was like, I get it. And I don't think if I hadn't gone to that night, to watch him. And this is what he was playing. When I walked in, he was playing Public Enemy Fight the Power instrumental with the Branford Marsalis solo. And then he went into hot music, which I didn't know at the time. I had not heard. And he had the jazz dancers on the floor, and they went ape shit. They just went, ugh. And I was like, wow, who is this guy that could play straight jazz? And then he went into So What?
Right.
Like, not a sample version, not a hip hop version, so it was like, oh, I get it. So that gave me the psychological confidence to come back and do giant stuff, because a lot of times jazz would be my mental touchstone. Like it's not, even though I appreciated you guys respecting my DJ skill, I had to start realizing it wasn't always just about mixing on beat or keeping a dance floor. Sometimes you got to intentionally give people a break and restart to shift and go into the next level with people. And my favorite moments of a lot of Giant Step nights were when I would play something and the musicians would come in, and then I pull back, sometimes all the way, and then let them carry, just like I was giving it to another DJ. And to me, I felt like we were accomplishing part of our mission when we did that.
Absolutely. I mean, when you couldn't tell, was it live or was it Memorex? Is he playing a record, or are those the musicians?
And I have people come up to me going, what's that record? I'm like, that's them.
I really recommend, if people haven't, to go to the Giant Step Vault and listen to the DJ sets that are in there and the performances. And there's an amazing 3-part Smash thing from Metropolis in '93. And every time I listen to it, I'm like, is that a record? Is that the musicians? I don't know. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I got to know a lot of those guys through just listening to them play every week. People like Fabio Magera, who I wound up using on a lot of New Breed stuff when we jumped off of 8 Ball and started New Breed. So back to what you said, I was using Giant Step as a testing ground. Originally, a lot of those loops were made just so those guys could have something to solo over, because you said there wasn't enough pre-made records that really fit our format. Between Tribe and Gangstar and UMCs and a few others, there weren't that many, and we were running those records out. So I was like, I got to come up with some stuff that these guys can play over and have something like a bed. But then and I would see night by night, like what really worked between who came up to say, what's that? Or just watching musicians get excited, knowing like, oh yeah, I know that. I remember I sampled Freedom Jazz Dance. And that was one of my favorites that I loved to play at the club, because the musicians knew it.
Right.
But yet the groove, it had a pocket that fit with hip hop perfectly. So a lot of that stuff, like jazz, a lot of the jazzy grooves were definitely inspired by my Giant Step nights. So like when I would do, most of this stuff on here was tried and tested at Giant Step, and there were really no other clubs that I was playing at that I could play that type of stuff. Everybody wanted either hits, or I had to do the variety, like play 3 hip hop, play 3 house, play 3 reggae, rinse, repeat. So Giant Step was like a great. It was like a place where I could go and pull out those jazz records that I just listened to at home, or just sampled, and like, oh, I can actually play this Down Bird record here.
So we're running out of time. So we have about a minute left. So anything else you want to say? It can be anything. I mean, like, about anything.
Well, first of all, I'm proud to have been part of the club, and I wear it as a badge of honor always. And I respect what you and Jonathan did. And there were nights where I wanted to give up when 30 people showed up, and I was like, all right, man.
And you were playing a Tom Waits record,
let's just give it one more week, and then I knew you guys knew it would grow. You had the vision, and I'm glad you brought me along for the ride, and it made me feel like I did something different, because most of those nights that I played in, and I don't remember most of the clubs I played in, But I remember my Giant Step nights. It was like a university we all went to because we were all learning.
Yep.
We were all figuring it out as we went along. And the fact that we're still here to talk to each other and honor each other, you know, that for me is a fulfilling thing. You know, that's something I want to be able to brag about. And then, you know, and all the other DJs like Ron and Nick and Chill Freeze and all the guests that came through, you know,
Yep.
they made that, they turned that plant into a tree.
Yep.
That has many branches now. So I'm very proud of you guys and my association with you. So,
and vice versa. Smash, thank you so much.
You're welcome, man.
It would never have been the same without you, because we had an idea, but you put it into action. So thank you. Hope you stick around. Hopefully I can get Jazzy to join now. I think you have to maybe unjoin.
Okay,
Yeah,
so do I
yeah.
click? Okay, cheers.
Bye, Smash. Thank you. Okay, so now, Jazzy, I know you're on. I'm going to pull you on, Jazzy. So give me 1 second to find you. Here we go. Okay, so Jazzy should be joining us any second. Smash now lives in San Francisco, by the way, guys. I think he told me he went there for a few weeks. And here we go. James Gala, Jazzy Nice in the house. How are you, Jazzy?
How are you?
I'm good. Very good. So just to give some perspective here. So Smash was the original DJ at Giant Step. And Jazzy used to DJ at our Groove Academy shows, which were the concerts that we used to do. And then Smash, I think, had to do a European tour. Maybe it was a few months into us doing the club, and we asked you to step in for him. And it was so great that it was like, wow, we need to just, have you guys switch off. So it was really you guys who were the cornerstones of the DJs at Giant Step for, I'd say, the first 5 years, maybe,
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you got started DJing.
Well, I started in radio, high school. My high school had a senior lounge.
And this was in Rochester, right?
And I was a city kid, but I went to a suburban school. They had a nice little 1950s metal tone arms with the big knobs, no mixing. But I was really into, my dad's a jazz musician, so I just grew up with that in my house. And of course I was a rock and roller, and as I got older, I got more progressive, and I was into Weather Report and Herbie Hancock, there you go, and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, Cameo, Confunction, Earth, Wind and Fire, and all that kind of stuff. George Clinton, Funkadelic, that was kind of what my shows were about. And then as I continued in school, I went to a community college which had a more proper radio station, and that was in 81, 82. So now it's starting to get more into some dance stuff, early post-disco stuff, Brunswick, on Mason and Smashers, that would be one of them. And then I moved to New York to continue schooling. I went to NYIT, and I was waiting on tables, going to school full time. We had a radio station there at NYIT.
And is that when you had a roommate who became very famous a little later? Tell us about that one. Who your roommate was?
I lived in the Bronx, and it was such a long commute because I lived in Throgs Neck. It was a train and a bus. So the dean of housing at my school recommended the 92nd Street Y. And on my floor, this young piano player named Harry Connick Jr. lived, and he played downstairs in the lounge. There was a grand piano down there, and we hung out all the time. He played at the Empire Diner in Chelsea, and yeah, we became good friends. Yeah.
And we met at Big House
Right.
when I was doing crazy parties at Big House in about '89.
Love.
Because yeah, Ada's House of Love. Because Mark and you were very close to Mark Kamen's, but you played at Big House. So where were some of the clubs you were playing at in New York pre Giant Step?
So how it happened was when I was at the college on 61st Street, I met just all these DJs. We had a station there, and all these kids from the Bronx, from Co-op City, and I kind of became a part of a crew. So we were doing things around the Bronx, parks, rented little places, gymnasiums, stuff like that. And then when I moved to Manhattan, is kind of when. So I lived on 75th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam, and there was a branch of Vinyl Mania, Upper West Side, and pal Joey worked there. And so I caught the bug, and I just spent most of my time and money on records. Kind of frustrated. I was hanging out first at the Bronx clubs like the Fever and the Devil's Nest, and then as I met more people downtown. So, I went to the Loft. I had friends who were lofters, and I had friends who were garage guys. And then, of course, the Funhouse, Bond, Roseland, the Roxy, Underground. Those were like really gritty urban spots. And then a couple of years later, I found out about Area and Palladium and, the real downtown artsy kind of thing, and Danceteria. And that became my favorite. And that's where I met Mark. And I met Mark Kamens, still going to school, still waiting on tables. And my last job was at a Turkish restaurant, and they were really into the club scene. One of them went back to Turkey, and he brought me to Istanbul to play. First New York DJ ever to play in Turkey. It was like this warehouse party. It was crazy. And just getting the records in was almost impossible. Anyway, Mark was doing harem nights.
Right, I remember, yeah.
46th Street. And I went after my trip, and I told him where I'd been, and he freaked out. He's like, "Are you kidding me? You bought house music in Istanbul." Like, get on the stage and scratch the record. And it was this like Lebanese just wailing record, and he had some other house record playing. He's like, "Scratch this." And it was all beat up. So I got up there and I scratched it. And that was the beginning of our relationship. From then, he just took me. And I hung out at his studio at Prime Cuts, saw how records were made. I went to his gigs. Red Zone, I think, was the first big room experience. And he'd always say, bring a bag of records, man. I'm going to get you on. Never played a record.
He couldn't get him off the decks.
We couldn't get him off, yeah. But he gave me Big House. Big House was down the street from his house.
Yeah.
That was his either Friday or Saturday. I don't remember. And he said, "Look, bring a box of records. I'm going to give you an hour and a half, 2 hours. The owners are going to be there. No pressure." Now, at the time, I think I'd been DJing for 10 years. So I had sort of honed my craft. I had a lot of records. And I was really into kind of cross-genre things, because I'd like to take hip-hop or house instrumentals and play an actual, it's like Stevie Wonder record under it and make it work without screwing it up, which is always a challenge. So that was it. And that's where I met you. And I believe I did an SOS night with you.
You did a few SOS nights. Yeah, right. Yeah. Save our Saturdays, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and so I loved disco, so it was really good. It was very disco-centric, if I remember.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But, I think one of the things that we bonded on was our love of sort of like jazz fusion and funk and sort of groove music. And, one of the, records that really reminds me of you whenever I hear it is Donald Byrd, Lasana Princess. Yeah, I mean, because whenever I hear that record, I think of you, because it's just, like that is the sort of, for me, the quintessential jazz, well, one of the quintessential Jazzy Nice records. So, what was it like for you when you started DJing at the club? Because as I'd been talking to Smash, I mean, it was like, it wasn't just a regular DJ gig. You had a whole bunch of musicians and rappers and all sorts to deal with. So talk a little bit about that.
And it was at was it Alchemy was the name of the place? Up this narrow, long space.
So the first place was SOBs, and I'm sure you did a few SOBs.
I did, but that was after Alchemy.
No, it was first at SOBs, and then Alchemy, which was on the corner of West Houston and West Broadway, was up the stairs. It became AKA afterwards. We did it there for a month. Unfortunately, in the middle of when the first Iraq War happened. So I think our crew outnumbered the people who came.
That was very. There were not many people there, but I do remember when you approached me and said Smash is going to be away for a week or two, and would you like to do it? We're doing jazz music. I'm like, holy shit, jazz! I'm going to play Wayne Shorter and Miles Davis. Oh, no, it's this. And then you gave me, as you did Smash, a stack of records. Talking Loud, Acid Jazz. Let me see.
You still have my Weather Report remix of This Is This. It's a white label, which I want back, actually.
Which one?
This Is This, Weather Report's a white label 12-inch that is very rare. So
I'll take that out.
Brilliant.
But I had already been playing Lonnie Liston Smith's expansions and Rock Creek Park and Los Conquistadores Chocolates and Shifting Gears. And I was also still really learning and going back. Also, it was, we hadn't really developed into the full musician thing yet. So that, in the beginning it was just Richard, and then maybe Richard and a conga player, So I had to, as it developed, and then we have drums. Now we have a rhythm section. I had to find all these drum tracks, and I had to have a lot of them because you didn't want to play the same thing all the time, But it was really exciting because as I was doing Giant Step, I was getting discovered. Like, it didn't take long after working about 6 months at Big House, which I think was 88. I was all of a sudden at Nels and at MK and Mars. And so I had to just stay up on everything. Basically, all of my days were full of getting all the new house, the new reggae, the new hip hop. And as Giant Step progressed, all the promo guys started coming. And then all our stuff started coming from Sweden and England all the time. So it was just stacks of records to go through and to keep it fresh, But I did have my routines. And Mr. Kenyatta, Lee Morgan, that was routine. But yeah, it was always spontaneous, and it was oftentimes a challenge, especially when the sound systems weren't exact.
Right, we had a few sound system issues at times. Any sort of favorite memories or moments that for you were
Well, so many, but I think one of them was when I was asked to do scratches on the first Jazzmatazz record, and I started to meet some of the other musicians that were on it. And anyway, I'm DJing. It's at Metropolis Cafe. It's sweaty. The stage is just above the dance floor. You can't even tell there's a stage. And so many people wanted to leave stuff in the. We didn't have a booth, but on the stage behind, there's Winter and there's coats and anyway, somebody bangs me on my shoulder. I'm in the middle of a mix. A little annoying when someone does that. I turn around. He says, "Jazz, you mind if I leave my horn here?" I look around. Branford Marsalis. I'm like, "Yeah, dude. I got Hard, man. Put it right under the turntable. Shit like that happened, man. Like, I can't even name half of the people who sat in. The drummer from Living Colour, I think, used to come down.
Yeah.
Questlove came and drummed with us a couple times.
Ravi Coltrane came down.
Yeah.
You know, and when we did the Jazzmatazz live down at the club, which I think you were DJing in.
Yeah.
And I had everyone like Nana Cherry and Roy Ayers and Lonnie Liston Smith. I mean, I'm Guru, obviously. I mean, and you went on tour with Jazzmatazz, right?
I did 3 tours with them. Yeah, I did the first promo tours in Europe, which was all the jazz festivals, ending at the Phoenix Jazz Festival up in England.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next one was Japan, which was a very long tour. That was close to 2 months on the road with them. And then finally came back to the U.S. and did a kind of a mini tour. But before that, we had actually traveled with them as Giant Step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You did your Germany and
Right.
Yeah.
Jazz Festival.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys were great. I became very close. Premier was awesome. You know, he actually let me use his turntables, if you remember that. Yeah.
So Genji wants you to tell your Miles Davis story.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh man. Okay. Well, okay. So when I lived on 75th Street, one of my best friends was Miles Carter. Rest in peace. He passed a couple of years ago. His father's Ron Carter. And, we were young and stupid and just crazy. And, of course, Ron had a beautiful apartment on West End. And the whole floor of the building. And, you'd come over there and Wayne Shorter would be sitting on the couch, So I'm pretty sure that Miles and I were up to no good. Miles is trying to find the key to the liquor cabinet. Dad's not home yet. And, when you came out of the elevator, you were in their apartment. And, yeah, Miles came in. I'm wasted on the couch. And Miles is to Miles, who's this white boy on the couch? And Miles is like, no, that's Jazzy. He's Italian. Something like that. Pretty fun.
And then what happened? Did he join in with the mischief, or he just?
I'm pretty sure Ron was straight up, man.
Right.
He pretty much scared us out of there, and we left. Ron was when you called Ron Carter's house, you didn't ask, is Miles home? Because I did that once. He said, James, when you call my house, you address me and you say, how are you, Mr. Carter?
Quite right. Quite right.
And I was corrected. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, any other sort of memories that you have from those days? Anything you want to sort of tell people about what was going on back then? Because life is obviously very different. I mean, not only we now are sort of in lockdown, but also New York has changed, and I don't like to say for the worst, because I always believe that things are moving forward, and the present is always the best, because we always have to really enjoy the now. But it was very unique back then, and the same thing when we're talking to Smash is your records were that was your calling card. If you didn't have those records, you couldn't play.
And it took a lot of diligence and a lot of time and a lot of effort. And yeah, I played Running Away by Roy Ayers, but man, he had a whole catalog of shit that I didn't know. So it was always exploration. There was it was discovery all the time. And then at the same time, getting hit with all the new stuff. And, that type of music, it really caught on worldwide. And it was great. It kept me on my toes, and I could do things like, I think one of those recordings you have of me, I play a weather report record in the middle of a set.
125th Street Congress.
Who does that? You know what I mean?
I mean, I mean, but that was exactly what we wanted. I mean, like when I used to hear that shit going, they'd be like, "Yes, that's it," and people were still dancing because they didn't have a clue. You know, it's like
if you didn't lose the dance floor, that's what made it rewarding.
Right.
And you know, it wasn't just about playing programmed, you know, looped music. We could actually, you know, right in the middle of that, you know, stick in these records they're complex. They have changes, they have bridges, solos.
Yep.
But they have vibe and this feeling and this rhythm that works.
Yeah. I mean, it's very similar to the Garage in the fact that you guys, the DJs, kind of hypnotized the crowd into loving records they'd never heard before. Because, you know, going back to what Smash was saying, and you were saying as well, you know, most clubs, you kind of knew what was going to get played. You know, like it was outstanding, it was rising to the top. It was the same old records. But you guys kind of like, you know, you hypnotize people into loving and getting into it, and they were in.
It was like almost tricking them into it.
Yeah.
And urging them into it. And then the vibe just spread. And with the bands, especially once we had a full band, as Smash said, I could just let go. And I'd look, and Genji was right next to me. And we had such a this great communication without speaking. I would just look at him. I'm like, yo, in 3. And and he'd come on strong, you know? And then they'd play, and this is when it worked, when it was magic. It's not always magic, you know? But when it really worked, you know, then I'd come in, and I'd have to find a record at that tempo to come off of them, and we'd have to, you know, it was this back and forth thing. And as you said, many times no one knew what was happening. Whether is this a record, is this the DJ and the band, or is it just the band? Who knows?
Yeah, and I mean, you can't really succeed without failing and really putting yourself out there. And I think it was very brave because you guys were up on the stage. Jonathan and I weren't up on the stage, you know, so the fact that you guys had the guts, all of you guys, to get up there and do it and believe in it. And, you know, it was interesting because once the club and what we were doing with live musicians, DJs became very popular, everybody started trying to do it. There were lots of copycat parties that started to happen, but none of them succeeded. No. And the reason was and some of them pulled like a couple of people from, you know, so it was a kind of sort of, but none of them worked because there was that magic in the nucleus that just couldn't really be, it couldn't be imitated at all. Yeah.
And I think that's because we grew just naturally, organically.
Yeah.
We grew together. And doing those little tours that we did brought us closer too. We were friends. We hung out.
Yeah.
You know? And I guess one thing I didn't mention was I started out, my gimmick when I first started, you know, by the time Giant Step started, I was about 2 years in, and I quit my restaurant gig and I was just DJing. But when I started out, my gimmick, I was a percussionist. So my gimmick, I don't know if you remember this, Friday nights at Big House, I'd have timbales on a stand, congas and the cowbell and the cymbal and the woodblock and shakers, and you know, in between in the breaks of the records, I go crazy and do a solo, and that's that was my thing. So I guess I always had a kind of musical sensibility of just being in a house where your dad's quartet is practicing 5 days a week gives you this other kind of set of ears.
So we don't have too much time, but I want to just cover a couple of things. Someone who I mentioned was Smash, who introduced me to Smash, but was also very good friends with you, was Mitch Moses, and you guys made records together, Jazz Moses records. Talk a little bit about your productions, because as with Smash, you were putting out remixes and putting out music, So.
Yeah. So actually, I met Smash at Robots, and I think my earliest productions were with Smash at 8 Ball Studio upstairs. But the very first record I ever actually produced was Willie One Blood. Empire.
Wow, of course, yeah, the Empire States, yeah. New York, just as I pictured it, skyscrapers and everything. Yeah, you sample Stevie Wonder.
And James Brown and a whole bunch. I didn't know what I was doing, production-wise. I had watched records being made at Prime Cuts with Mark, so I had a rough idea, and I'd been there for the final mixes and stuff. So but as far as like getting the track done, we had a great engineer. He had a ton of money in. So we did the actual production, pre-production and everything at Platinum Island, which was, top of the line. Janet Jackson was next door. That was my first record. And
Baby Buddha?
Mitch and I worked together on a few remixes as Jazz Moses. But the Baby Buddha thing happened through Micmac Records. Marvin's son, Scott Schlechter, was a fan of the club, and he had his alter sub-label CNS, and they offered us a deal to do an album, and that just that's when I got together with Mitchell, and boy, everybody's on that record. Nappy, Fabio, Richard, Jay, basically most of Groove Collectors on that record. Proud of that record. It still sounds good.
Sounds great. Anything else you want to say? Because we're gonna have to wrap up part one in a minute, or else we're gonna get thrown off this. Yeah.
Get Nick on.
Sorry?
Got to get Nick on.
Yeah, no, but but this is gonna. But the first hour they shut us off.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Cool. People, stay tuned. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
But thank you, first of all. It was an amazing time in my life. It helped evolve me a lot as a DJ, and I'm so happy that you were able to morph with the times and do what you do, marketing, that stuff. Our first marketing experience is 5 Soul.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. 555 Soul.
That's right.
So we're going to have to wrap this up. Jazzy, thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything you've done. You've done for Giant Step over the years. Without you guys, we wouldn't have had the sound that we had. And just to let everybody know, in about a minute, I'm going to have to switch this off, and I'm going to start it up again, and I'm going to have Nickodemus and Ron Trent. Unfortunately, IG Live only lasts an hour each portion. So we have about a minute. Jazzy, anything else you want to say?
I want to say Happy New Year, everybody. Stay away from other people as much as you can. Let's get rid of this thing. Everybody do the right thing. And Maurice, all the best.
Thank you.
Things out there. Hey, Jonathan, and everybody else who's watching. Oh, hello.
There's a lot of people. Jonathan's on, Mac's on, Jonesy's on, Genji's on.
Nice.
I see Eric's on. I mean, there's a lot of people. Chris Annabelle. And that's just all the people who I can even see. I mean, there's just a lot of great people out there. Okay, people, we'll be back on in a minute. Thank you for joining us for part one. We'll be back with part two with Nickodemus and Ron Trent. Also, Tony is on as well. I think still lives in Paris. Hey, Tony. All right, guys, I'll see you all in a minute. Thank you, Jazzy. Thank you, Smash. Part 2's coming right up. Bye-bye.